Oliver, a 34-year-old graphic designer, had been in a relationship with Victoria, a 32-year-old marketing manager, for almost 4 years. They had met through mutual friends at a gallery opening and instantly connected over their shared love for art and design. After living together for over a year in a cozy apartment in downtown Seattle, everything seemed perfect. Victoria often spoke about their future together, and Oliver believed their relationship was progressing well. She dropped hints about marriage, frequently sharing photos of engagement rings and discussing potential wedding venues. Oliver, feeling certain about their future, had been planning to propose next month. One morning, Oliver was working at a local cafe, a place he frequented for quiet reflection and inspiration. He sat in the corner, earbuds in, absorbed in his design work. He was lost in the rhythm of his tasks when he heard familiar laughter. Victoria, along with her friends Bella and Hannah, sat behind him, chatting loudly. At first, Oliver considered greeting them, but hesitated when he overheard his name being mentioned. What he heard next shattered his world. Victoria's voice, usually warm, was now cold and mocking as she discussed their relationship with her friends. Oliver's heart sank as he listened to Victoria's cruel laughter, a sound he never thought he'd hear coming from her. "Of course I'll let him propose," she said with a laugh. "It's going to be hilarious. He's been obsessing over rings for weeks. He thinks I'm all in, but I'm just keeping him around for the perks. You should see how much he's been spending on this apartment. He thinks I'm moving in after the proposal, but I'm just waiting for the right time to bail." Bella chuckled in response, clearly not fully aware of the depths of Victoria's deceit. "You're really going to do it, huh? Humiliate him in front of all your friends?" Victoria's voice dropped to a whisper, but the cruelty was still clear. "Absolutely. I've got him wrapped around my finger. After he proposes, I'll turn him down in front of everyone. I'll tell him what a fool he is for thinking I'd settle down with someone like him. I've already made plans with Jason for a weekend getaway after, and he's way more exciting. I'm just using Oliver for his money and stability." Oliver sat motionless, his mind racing as the words sank in. He had been blind to the manipulations, the lies. Victoria had been pretending for months, playing the role of the loving girlfriend while secretly planning her escape for a life with Jason, a colleague of hers from the office. She had been using him, stringing him along with promises of a future together, while planning to tear it all apart when the moment was right. As she continued her conversation, detailing how she had been hiding money in a separate account and planning to move in with Jason, Oliver's hands began to shake. But he stayed perfectly still. He couldn't let her know that he had overheard everything. He needed evidence, solid proof that would leave no room for her to deny the truth. He continued to listen, clenching his fists to control his rising anger. Victoria went on, talking about how she had been showing Jason photos of the engagement ring Oliver had been eyeing, and how she had already picked out the perfect place for their trip. He recorded everything on his phone, making sure to capture her exact words. His heart was pounding in his chest, but he remained focused. This was his chance to expose her and take back control. Once they left the cafe, Victoria and her friends walked to their car, laughing as if nothing had happened. Oliver remained in his seat, staring out the window in a daze. He had just learned that everything he thought he knew about their relationship was a lie. But he wasn't going to let her get away with it. He had everything he needed now. He had proof, and he was going to make sure she faced the consequences of her actions. Later that evening, when Victoria returned home, she was in high spirits, completely unaware that her plan had been exposed. She kissed Oliver on the cheek and casually mentioned their anniversary dinner plans for next week. Oliver smiled, pretending everything was normal, while his mind was already working on how to turn the tables. He was done being the fool. This was his time to take control of his own life again. Over the next few days, Oliver meticulously pieced together the plan that would expose Victoria for what she truly was. His first step was to gather more evidence. He created a fake Instagram account and began following Victoria's closest friends, Bella and Hannah. Within a few days, he had screenshots of them out at bars, partying with Victoria and Jason. Some of the photos were innocuous at first, just friends hanging out. But then he found the damning ones. There were pictures of Victoria and Jason, arms around each other, laughing, and in one particularly painful shot, they were kissing, while Victoria still wore the pendant necklace Oliver had given her for their anniversary last year. But Oliver didn't want to act out of impulse. He needed more concrete proof, so he kept digging. He knew Victoria always worked late on Thursdays, a routine she had never deviated from. Oliver decided to test his theory. One Thursday evening, he went to a small Italian restaurant near her office, a place she loved to mention when discussing potential date nights. He sat at the bar, trying to blend in, and waited. Within half an hour, the door opened, and there she was, walking in with Jason, laughing together like they shared an inside joke. Oliver felt his heart twist as he watched them. They sat down at a corner table, too absorbed in each other to notice him. He watched them share a plate of pasta, Jason feeding her a piece of bread while Victoria playfully wiped sauce off his face. It was clear to Oliver that they were far more than just co-workers. This was something deeper, something far more intimate. Oliver was careful to remain calm. He didn't want to cause a scene. Instead, he ordered a beer, sat back, and quietly recorded everything on his phone. He filmed the entire interaction, capturing their closeness, their shared moments of affection, and the unmistakable chemistry between them. He even recorded a short clip of Victoria laughing at something Jason said, the same laugh that had once made Oliver's heart skip a beat. Now it just made him sick. The next day, Oliver ran into Bella at the grocery store. He decided it was time to confront her without revealing his knowledge of everything that had happened. He casually asked her about the cafe meetup, pretending everything was fine. Bella's response was nervous and she stammered, clearly uncomfortable. Oliver continued with the conversation, asking questions about Victoria's work projects, all while subtly tightening the noose. "How's Victoria's project going?" "I hear she's been really busy lately with all those lat meetings," Oliver asked, his voice casual. Bella seemed to be sweating under the pressure, but she didn't seem to realize he was on to her. Oliver pulled out his phone and showed her a photo of the engagement ring he had been planning to propose with, just a picture he'd found online. "I was thinking of buying this. What do you think?" he asked innocently. Bella's face went through a range of emotions in just a few seconds. Oliver could see the realization hit her, and she suddenly became aware of the trap she was standing in. "Look, I gotta go," Bella mumbled, clearly flustered, before she turned and hurried out of the store. Just a few minutes later, Oliver received a call from Victoria, which he knew was coming. Her voice was unusually sweet and overly concerned. She asked about dinner plans for the weekend, almost as if nothing had changed. Oliver didn't let on that he knew everything. He kept his cool and assured her everything was fine. But in reality, he was already far ahead of her. The game had shifted. He had all the evidence, and now he was preparing to turn the tables. The ball was in his court, and he was determined to expose her for what she had been doing behind his back. By now, Oliver had completely transformed. No longer the naive man who trusted without question, he was now a man on a mission, determined to reclaim his life and expose the lies that had been building for months. The days following his discoveries were filled with cold determination. He wasn't angry anymore. He was calm, focused, and ready. He had all the evidence, recordings, photos, and messages that revealed Victoria's affair with Jason, as well as her complete lack of respect for him. Oliver knew that he needed to act strategically. He had planned every detail. Instead of confronting Victoria immediately, he let her think everything was still normal, that her plan to humiliate him would go off without a hitch. He knew she expected him to propose at their anniversary dinner, and she was eager to flaunt her conquest in front of their friends. What she didn't know was that Oliver was about to take control of the situation in a way she could never have predicted. He made a reservation at an upscale Italian restaurant in the city, a place Victoria had been talking about for months. She had dropped hints about how much she loved the idea of celebrating there, and Oliver had listened carefully. This dinner would be the setting for his revelation. He made sure that Victoria's friends, Bella and Hannah, were also invited, knowing they would be there to witness the big moment. The night of the dinner arrived, and Oliver kept his composure. He wore the sharp blue suit that Victoria had always complimented him on, and he picked her up at 7 p.m. As they drove to the restaurant, Victoria was bubbly and excited, constantly checking her phone. Oliver couldn't help but smile to himself. She thought she was about to get everything she wanted, the proposal, the public spectacle, but she had no idea what was waiting for her. When they arrived at the restaurant, everything seemed perfect. The atmosphere was lively, the table set, and the anticipation was palpable. Victoria's friends were already seated, their phones ready to capture the moment when Oliver would get down on one knee. Oliver, however, had no intention of proposing the way she expected. As dinner progressed, Oliver noticed that Victoria's excitement was growing. She fidgeted, glancing at him with an expectant look in her eyes, waiting for the proposal. When the dessert arrived, he stood up and raised his glass, commanding the attention of the entire table. "I'd like to make a toast," Oliver announced, his voice steady and clear. Victoria's face lit up, and her friends quickly grabbed their phones, ready for the moment. But instead of proposing, Oliver turned to Victoria and said, "To the woman who has shared my life for the past 4 years." He paused, letting the tension build. "And shared her life with Jason from her office for the past several months?" Victoria's face instantly froze. Her smile disappeared, replaced with disbelief. Her friends, Bella and Hannah, were speechless, unable to move or react. The room fell silent, save for the faint sound of a chair scraping against the floor as Oliver pulled out his phone. With a calm, unflinching expression, Oliver played the recording he had made at the cafe, the one where Victoria had laughed about humiliating him after the proposal. Her cruel words filled the quiet restaurant. "I'll brutally dump him after he proposes. Jason and I already have plans for a trip." The color drained from Victoria's face. Her entire body seemed to sag as she realized that her plan had backfired spectacularly. Bella and Hannah sat in stunned silence, their eyes wide with shock as they processed the betrayal. Victoria jumped to her feet, knocking over her wine glass in the process. "You set me up!" she screamed, her voice high-pitched with panic and anger. But Oliver remained calm, his eyes locked on hers. "No, Victoria," he said coolly. "You set yourself up. You've been planning this for months, and I just decided not to be your fool anymore." As Victoria tried to scramble for control of the situation, Oliver turned to Bella and Hannah. "Did you know about this? Did you know she was planning to humiliate me like this? Or were you just happy to play along?" The tension in the room was unbearable. Bella looked away, ashamed, while Hannah didn't even meet Oliver's eyes. Then Victoria, completely unraveling, screamed, "You ruined everything!" She launched herself at Oliver, but Jacob, who had been sitting at the bar keeping an eye on the situation, stepped in and calmly held her back. Oliver turned to the manager, signaling for help as he continued to stand tall. The restaurant had gone dead quiet, everyone watching the spectacle unfold. With the situation under control, the staff escorted Victoria out, still shouting and trying to defend herself. As Oliver paid the bill, Jacob gave him a supportive nod. "You did the right thing, man," he said quietly, and Oliver could only smile. He felt free. The weight of betrayal, which had hung so heavily over him, was finally lifted. He had taken back control. The fallout from the dinner was immediate and intense. Victoria, once so confident in her ability to manipulate, was now left to face the truth. Oliver's world, however, was already shifting in a different direction, one where he could reclaim his peace and his future. As Victoria was escorted out of the restaurant, Oliver felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. The anger that had once consumed him had been replaced with clarity. For the first time in months, he felt like himself again. His friends, who had been watching from the sidelines, were quick to support him. Bella, clearly regretful, apologized profusely. "I didn't know, Oliver. I didn't know it was this bad," she confessed, her voice shaking. "I thought she was just joking. I never imagined this." Oliver gave her a small nod, but he didn't feel the need to say much. Bella had been an accomplice in her own way, but she wasn't the one who had been deceiving him for years. She was the first to see the truth, and that was enough for now. As for Hannah, she sat in silence, her guilt evident in the way she avoided making eye contact. Oliver had no intention of holding her accountable in that moment, not when Victoria had already done all the damage. The days following the confrontation were a blur. Oliver's phone flooded with messages, some from concerned friends, others from people who had heard about the restaurant incident and wanted to know if he was okay. But it was the messages from Victoria that stood out the most. She bombarded him with texts, ranging from desperate apologies to angry tirades. One message stood out. "I can't believe you're doing this to me. I was just waiting for the right time, Oliver. You were never good enough for me." It was at that moment that Oliver realized how far gone their relationship had truly been. She had used him, exploited his love, and now she was blaming him for exposing the truth. But instead of responding in anger, Oliver blocked her number and silenced any form of contact. He didn't need to waste any more of his energy on her. In the following weeks, Oliver's life began to take on a new rhythm. He had a renewed sense of purpose. He started spending more time doing the things he loved, working on his graphic designs, exploring new art exhibits, and re-engaging with old friends. He had been so caught up in the illusion of his relationship with Victoria that he had forgotten how much he enjoyed these things. But it wasn't just his career and hobbies that were improving. Oliver also began to reconnect with his own sense of self-worth. He had been so blinded by love, so willing to give everything to someone who had never truly valued him, that he had lost touch with his own needs and desires. Now he was rediscovering who he was without Victoria's shadow hanging over him. And then, just when things were starting to feel like they were falling into place, he met someone new. Her name was Lily, and she was a freelance photographer. They met at an art gallery opening, and for the first time in months, Oliver felt a genuine connection with someone. Lily wasn't like Victoria. She wasn't interested in playing games or using people for her own benefit. She was independent, compassionate, and passionate about her work. Their relationship started slowly, but it felt right. They shared common interests, laughed together, and spent time exploring the city. Lily made Oliver realize that love didn't have to be complicated, manipulative, or painful. It could be honest, nurturing, and easy. He wasn't rushing anything. He knew he had to take his time and rebuild trust, not just with Lily, but with himself. For the first time in months, Oliver felt a sense of hope for the future. He was no longer stuck in the past, trapped in a relationship that had been built on lies. He was free, and the possibilities for his life were endless. Oliver's personal growth after the ordeal with Victoria was nothing short of remarkable. Before everything came to light, he had been a man who, though successful in his career, had allowed his emotions and the people around him to dictate his happiness. His relationship with Victoria had consumed him in a way that he couldn't see the manipulation until it was too late. He had given so much of himself, often ignoring red flags because he wanted to believe in the love they had shared. But once the truth was exposed, Oliver was forced to confront the reality of who he had become in that relationship. He had allowed himself to be treated like a fool, and though it was painful, it was a wake-up call that pushed him toward self-reflection. For the first time in a long time, Oliver began to question the choices he had made. Why had he allowed Victoria's lies to continue for so long? What had kept him from seeing the truth about their relationship sooner? The answers didn't come easy, but they did come. He had been seeking validation from someone who didn't care about him the way he cared about them. He had stayed in a relationship because he was afraid of being alone, of not finding someone else who could make him feel wanted. Oliver realized that he had been so afraid of rejection that he allowed himself to settle for less than he deserved. He had ignored his own worth in the hopes of holding on to something that was never truly there. In the months after the confrontation, Oliver started working on himself in ways he hadn't before. He made time for self-care, something he had neglected during his relationship with Victoria. He took up yoga, something that helped him focus on his breathing and ground his thoughts. His work, which had once been a passion, had become a therapeutic outlet. He poured himself into his graphic designs, creating artwork that resonated with him on a deeper level. Oliver also took steps to rebuild the relationships he had neglected during his time with Victoria. He reconnected with friends, old and new, and began to embrace social activities that brought him joy. It was during these moments that he realized something truly profound. The people around him had always cared for him, and their support was never conditional on his relationship status. They had always seen his worth, and now, so did he. However, the most significant part of Oliver's growth came from within. He had learned to trust himself again. He no longer sought validation from others, especially from someone like Victoria, who had only used him for her own gain. Oliver understood now that his happiness was his own responsibility. He didn't need someone else to complete him. He was already whole. He also learned the power of patience and understanding. His relationship with Lily, though still in its early stages, was a testament to his growth. Unlike his previous relationship, this one was built on mutual respect, clear communication, and a shared sense of independence. Lily didn't need him to fulfill some expectation or ideal. She appreciated him for who he was, and in return, Oliver respected her space and individuality, something that had been lacking in his previous relationship. As the weeks turned into months, Oliver felt the weight of the past lifting off his shoulders. He knew that he had a long way to go in his journey of healing, but he was no longer afraid. He had learned that no matter how painful the process of letting go had been, it was worth it in the end. He was stronger, wiser, and more aware of what he wanted out of life and relationships. As the months passed, Oliver's life continued to evolve in ways he never expected. The pain from the betrayal slowly turned into fuel for his personal growth. What had once felt like a catastrophic loss, the end of his relationship with Victoria, was now a turning point, the moment when he truly began to understand the power of resilience and self-worth. When Victoria had humiliated him at that restaurant, he had felt like the world was crashing down on him. But looking back now, he could see how everything had fallen into place exactly as it needed to. The exposure of her lies wasn't just a public reckoning for her. It was a moment of liberation for Oliver. It marked the beginning of his journey back to himself. In the aftermath, he was able to shed the weight of the toxic relationship and step into a new chapter of his life, one where he was in control, not at the mercy of someone else's manipulations. In the time that followed, Oliver's emotional scars began to heal. His once narrow view of relationships expanded as he realized that love didn't have to be painful or deceptive. He had been living in a lie for so long, but now He was free to experience the world without the cloud of betrayal hanging over him. He understood now that love should not require sacrifice at the cost of one's dignity and self-respect. Love should build you up, not break you down. His connection with Lily grew stronger with each passing day. Their relationship wasn't without its challenges, but it was built on the foundation of mutual respect, honesty, and understanding. Lily was not perfect, but she was perfect for him in the way that they complemented each other. She respected his independence, just as he respected hers. They shared moments of joy and intimacy without the pressures of manipulation or pretense. It wasn't the whirlwind romance he had once dreamed of, but it was something deeper and more enduring. Oliver began to realize that the greatest lesson he had learned from his time with Victoria was the importance of setting boundaries and not tolerating mistreatment. He no longer allowed fear to dictate his decisions. He no longer feared being alone, and he no longer tolerated being in a relationship that didn't align with his values. He knew his worth now, and that knowledge gave him the strength to walk away from what wasn't right. And as for Victoria, the consequences of her actions continued to unfold. She had been exposed for who she truly was, and the ripple effect of her betrayal was felt across their social circle. Her friends distanced themselves from her, as they had seen the truth that Oliver had been too blinded to notice. She lost her job, her credibility, and ultimately the respect of everyone who had once supported her. The karma that Oliver had been waiting for had arrived, and it was a harsh reminder that deception always comes with a price. For Oliver, seeing the downfall of someone who had tried to destroy him was not about revenge. It was about redemption. He didn't need to rub her failure in her face. The fact that she had lost everything was enough. It reminded him that integrity and honesty were far more valuable than any fleeting moment of triumph or ego boost that came from manipulative behavior. He had chosen the path of truth, and that was his victory. Now, with a renewed sense of purpose and a heart free from the shackles of his past relationship, Oliver looked ahead to a future that was full of possibility. He wasn't perfect, but he was no longer a victim. He had learned the most important lesson of all: never settle for less than you deserve, and always be true to yourself. The life lesson from Oliver's journey is one of self-worth and the power of standing up for oneself. In relationships, it's easy to get caught up in the emotional roller coaster, sometimes losing sight of what truly matters: respect, honesty, and love. Oliver's experience shows us that when you allow someone to manipulate your emotions or mistreat you, you lose a part of yourself in the process. But when you gather the strength to walk away from that toxicity, you regain control over your life. Oliver learned the hard way that the key to happiness lies within yourself, not in another person's approval or affection. No matter how much time you invest in a relationship, it's essential to prioritize your own dignity and self-respect. The moment you start to accept less than you deserve, you stop being true to yourself. This experience taught him that love should be nurturing and uplifting, not built on deceit or selfish gain. By taking control of his own narrative and exposing the truth, Oliver found a renewed sense of freedom. He learned that it's never too late to reclaim your life and rebuild from the ground up, even after experiencing the most painful betrayals. Oliver's story is a powerful reminder that self-respect and personal boundaries should always come first in relationships. If you find yourself in a situation where your partner is manipulating you, gaslighting you, or failing to treat you with respect, it's crucial to confront the truth and prioritize your own well-being. Sometimes, the hardest part is recognizing that the person you love is no longer the person you thought they were, and accepting that you deserve better. In real life, this means having the courage to walk away from toxic relationships, no matter how difficult it may seem at the time. It's important to trust your instincts and not ignore the red flags, even if it feels like you're losing something valuable. Ultimately, the right relationship will be one where both partners are willing to support, uplift, and encourage each other, creating a balanced, loving dynamic built on trust and mutual respect.